Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for Ultimate's podcast. My name's Andy McCullough, I'm one of the solutions architects at Ultimate, and I'm joined today by a special guest who's going to be talking with me about Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, and how Citrix and Microsoft are working together in the DaaS space to provide some really differentiated solutions for customers. So, Jamie, would you like to introduce yourself for everyone?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Andy. So I'm Jaime Neail. I'm the Microsoft BDM Alliance guy for Citrix in the UK and I guess I've been in and around the channel and the industry for 30 years now. So
you look far too young for that.
Thanks. The money's in the post, clearly. I spent hours in hair and makeup for this one.
Absolutely. So 30 years, that's a long old time. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much the entire duration of the Citrix and
Wow,
Microsoft
when
relationship.
I first started getting involved with Citrix, it was kind of Metaframe on Windows NT 351.
Oh, I loosely remember that.
Oh, I know. That was after my dirty days of Novell. So, yes, that is going a throwback there. So, but it's interesting, you talk about the journey of our organisation, Citrix, and the collaboration with Microsoft. That we've seen that obviously move through the journey vastly into VDI, and I think if you ask most customers today, they know Citrix as a VDI company.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there can be some perception challenges from customers, because especially with some of the recent additions that Microsoft have brought to market around AVD and Windows 365, there can be a perception that maybe kind of Microsoft is starting to tread on Citrix's toes a bit, and they're starting to kind of get their elbows out and move into that space. I mean, it's been a relationship between Citrix and Microsoft that's really evolved over kind of decades now, but I think fundamentally they go through different cycles where kind of they may be very closely aligned in terms of what they're delivering, but fundamentally Citrix has always been a value add solution on top of Microsoft, even going back to, like you say, your Metaframe XP days, where it would be an add-on on top of terminal services to provide some enterprise capabilities. And in terms of the overall solutions they're delivering together, it feels like they're in a very similar space, so it's not necessarily a direct competition in terms of solutions they're bringing to market. There's still that collaborative development side that they're both working closely together to give customers what they need.
And I think you're right, because if you look at what we're doing now, and we recently, and people may have seen it online, made a joint announcement together with Microsoft about how we're driving extended capability into their cloud PC under Windows 365. With our HDX engine. So that's driving additional value into those customers that see that as a potential solution for their user base.
I mean, value is a really good conversation. This tends to be one of the fundamentals that we have conversation with customers around. Is customers tend to be very kind of value focused. They want to make sure they're getting the best bang for buck, especially kind of with the economy how it is now. People have to make kind of tough decisions in terms of where they're going to put where they're going to stack up their money and what solutions they want to prioritize. And I think a lot of customers are in a position where they might be considering using public cloud for hosting desktops, where they might kind of be in a position where they've already invested in M365 licensing, or they could have Windows E3 or E5, and they see AVD sat there, and AVD's free. So it's got to be good if it's free, isn't it? And there can be some misconception around that.
That makes me laugh every time, because free doesn't necessarily mean free, does it? The elephant in the room is, customers have got access typically through their enterprise agreements with Microsoft to E3 and E5, as you say, Andy. And the challenge there is why do I need anything else if I've got access to this capability?
Yeah, some people might think it's good enough, and I think for some that might be the case. But I mean,
and I would agree with you, and I think Citrix would generally agree with you that actually for some customers in certain environments, AVD probably is the right solution because it provides good enough capability and services to that user base. But what we see is typically the enterprise space customers, or the customers that require greater security features. And I'm not necessarily going to get into a sales pitch about our product, but they want that capability. Then Citrix provides that extension to that and drives other features that they wouldn't necessarily get in the native package.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not necessarily a day one decision, because I think kind of what we see quite a lot is customers where they might have kind of said, oh, AVD is great, we're going to get into that space, and kind of generally that can be a sound strategic decision, especially kind of modern way of working.
Yep.
There's a lot more mobility requirements, so kind of moving to the cloud is generally a good idea. But it's when they come to day two, and that's where things can get a little bit sticky. So I mean, what's your take on kind of where maybe customers need to take an opportunity to revisit?
So the interesting thing there, Andy, is I do, and my colleagues in the business, we talk to a lot of customers directly and with partners like yourselves. And one of the key things we're often hearing is that a lot of customers have taken a step into native AVD and are now realising, that the comment we made earlier, we laughed about free.
Yeah.
It probably didn't satisfy their needs. And one of the underlying challenges, particularly, is sometimes the runaway cost around storage and compute on Azure, because that's never been factored into the thought process in the word free. So what they bought was the control plane typically, and access for their users to that platform, but not actually the usage of that platform. So, and that drives interesting conversations, debates about how we can help solve those challenges. And that can be a driver. There are other drivers around, user functionality and access to other platforms. I represent our Microsoft relationship, and therefore I care that the answer is driving, consumption of Microsoft Azure.
Yep.
But our customers are not necessarily all in on Azure necessarily, and they might be private data center customers, their own data centers. They might be using other hyperscaler platforms. Yeah. So all of these come into play.
Absolutely, and I mean, I think kind of where we're seeing a lot of customers on the journey is there's a very, very, very small percentage where things are going to be 100% public cloud.
Yeah.
Probably 90+% of customers are going to be hybrid, because there's always, and it's a classic enterprise problem, there's a very, very, very long tail of legacy.
Yeah.
And enterprise organisations tend to be very good at adopting new services. They're really bad at getting rid of old ones, and some of those older services just might not be suitable for kind of moving to cloud or refactoring to use kind of platform services or any of the good stuff that we should be doing in terms of app modernisation. But there's going to be long-term requirements. So obviously, in terms of Azure Virtual Desktop, they've got the capability of doing on-prem with Azure Stack now, which was a relatively recent announcement. But still, Azure Stack might not be a suitable solution for everyone who's looking at kind of hybrid in terms of kind of supporting on-prem and public cloud. But we have a lot of customers where there may be other environments they need to support. So multi-cloud tends to be a kind of growing topic amongst customers, probably in the more cloud mature organizations where they've realized that they want to avoid situations where they're over-invested with a single provider, and they might need to kind of diversify from a kind of risk or functionality
but Andy,
perspective.
I actually think that drives its own challenge in itself. You're talking to customers earlier today, actually, they've invested in probably every cloud or cloud management platform that you could think of, every brand that exists out there, including competitors of our own, and are actually struggling to bring that together now, because some things work in some platforms and not others. Some functionality exists in our platform that doesn't work in that platform. It creates in itself its own challenges. Yeah,
absolutely. But I mean, I think in terms of customer perception, I still think they see Azure as the best place for virtual desktop workloads, and that's kind of for a few reasons. And my take on it is that Microsoft have really gone all in on virtual desktops in the last few years. If we look at kind of how virtual desktops were perceived by Microsoft, it's always felt like being a kind of niche solution. You're swimming against the tide, you're trying to make it do things that it really doesn't want to do. We've gone from that position to a solution to a position where we've got some kind of major services that Microsoft are pushing out. We've got Azure Virtual Desktop, which has been around for several years now. We've got Windows 365, which is again another kind of push to providing virtual desktops as a way for people to do their day's work. We've even got to a point where there's a kind of OS just for virtual desktops. We've got Windows 10 multi-session and Windows 11 multi-session, which is specifically optimized for delivering virtual desktops and giving them user experience, and also giving companies the ability to gain cost efficiency. So giving people an actual desktop environment, but getting the benefits that they'd have from using terminal services or RDS previously. So there seems to be a lot of investment from the Microsoft side to kind of level up what the baseline looks like. And I think that can only be a good thing for customers, in my opinion.
We see that all the time with, you know, Microsoft bring out, you know, we use that phrase there, good enough, technology that's good enough, but actually they start to see where the customer challenges are, where you know, our partners like Citrix deliver those extra capabilities. You know, typically Microsoft will then look to see how they can acquire or develop their own abilities in that space. And I think it's incumbent on companies like us to continue to understand what that looks like, understand the needs and the value points of our customers, and continue to innovate and drive you know, additional value over and above. That's critical, and you know, that's critical to our success as an organisation, but actually it's critical to driving, you know, the customer's experience of that hyperscaler cloud, the Azure platform, because that then creates a win-win. And bringing it back to the Microsoft Citrix Microsoft partnership, you know, our partnership is all about how do we drive those value points into our customers so that, you know, frankly, they continue to consume in the cloud on Microsoft's platform and get great customer sat, you know, and functionality. So it's important.
So yeah, I mean, it's a good time to be a customer these days. There's a lot of capabilities there. So you mentioned cost. So in my experience, whenever there's conversations around public cloud and desktops, cost is probably top 2 things that are concerns to customers. So what does Citrix bring to the table in terms of kind of like cost optimization? Because obviously, Azure AVD is free, as we've discussed. So how's Citrix actually going to save money for an AVD customer?
It's a great question, and as I say, you know, the elephant in the room of our customers, they've got this access to a free AVD environment. It feels like they can enable their workforce and deliver, you know, a virtual desktop to any device anywhere. But the reality is that, you know, as we've discussed, without layering on additional management tools, security layers, and so on and so forth, to actually bring back that product and that capability to where the customer's expectation is, then, you know, those costs start stacking up exponentially, and then the management layers. So where Citrix typically are able to address that, you know, and specifically hitting the nail on costs, you know, if you're driving Citrix DAS into an AVD customer, we're talking about changing the control plane. We're not talking about taking Microsoft out of the conversation. So this is a very much a collaborative engagement, hence the partnership, and this is why we work together. But typically we're seeing between 30 and 45% cost savings for our customers. Now you might say, wow, but where's that coming from? That can't be on the license cost. It's not. So you know, we're able to take out duplication of capability. So where customers are typically buying additional third-party tools, probably management capability, reporting capability, that's all sitting inside our technology, as well as our capability to optimize the platform. And again, you know, some people, when I say optimize, they might see that, and forgive me in speaking in Microsoft speak, Microsoft are concerned about something they call ACR, which is Azure customer revenue. So that's how much the customer is spending monthly in that Azure platform. And if that is declining, that's, you know, sending some bing, bing, bing red lights going off on a server somewhere, which is attracting attention. That's not what we're doing here necessarily. What we're actually doing is, with those savings, is typically empowering our joint customers to effectively use those savings to move more workloads or additional workloads and or more users to that platform where they're getting value. They obviously recognise the value of doing that in the first place, you know, and so it gives them that opportunity to continue to do that at a better pace.
Absolutely, and I mean, I think customers appreciate the ability to kind of get what they're expecting out of a solution. I mean, I think kind of a lot of initial forays into public cloud, there can be an element of kind of underestimation in terms of what the total cost, and there can sometimes be a little bit of shock when that kind of first month's invoice comes in. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't realise that was how much it was going to be. So, I mean, there's a specific product that Citrix are actually kind of offering now around cost optimization for AVD workloads as well. So even if customers may not necessarily need the full DAS set of capabilities, they could still gain some of the ability to kind of optimize the cost
so
and get some
we've
better
got that
user
Citrix Web Base capability, which is the AVD optimization pack.
Yeah,
which is what you're talking about. So that is giving our customers that ability to layer that technology into their environment and start to drive those savings and manage that environment themselves.
Okay, so it's quite interesting because if customers are maybe kind of halfway, they're maybe looking for some of the capabilities they get from Citrix DAS, but they might not necessarily want to go kind of whole hog into kind of gaining some of the additional benefits they can get through Citrix. They could still kind of get some partial benefit through the AVD optimization pack as well. I suppose that obviously wouldn't address some of the kind of management complexities that we see with AVD. I think we tend to come into that as a challenge with a lot of customers where there are some limitations of management at scale with AVD that there are ways and means to address it, but depending on the customer's level of skills around cloud management, what their ability to kind of provide their own automation is, there can be some kind of real fundamental problems with managing large-scale AVD environments. And I think one of the things that you touched on, which I find quite important, is things as simple as monitoring. So with Citrix DAS, you're getting really good visibility into kind of like performance, user experience, and you kind of just expect it to be there with Citrix, and then you kind of differentiate that against kind of what AVD provides out of the box. And this is where customers start to look at, well, okay, we don't necessarily have what we need. Do we need to go and look at a third-party product? And that's where we see a lot of the complication coming in.
You kind of get complication, scope creep, and additional layers of cost. And
exactly. We thought this was going to be good enough, and then actually it turns out we need a little bit more. And
we're talking about the technology, Andy. The reality is that's then left to other people in our customers' organisation to work out how to buy that stuff. You know,
absolutely.
And, organisations like you can obviously help with that, but that is also another minefield: challenge, complexity, compliance, and a whole nother conversation perhaps on one of these recordings.
Absolutely. So we're talking about complexity, enterprise scale desktops. One of the biggest strengths, in my opinion, that customers have with Citrix is visibility. And there's a few different areas where that comes in, but it's basically just giving you visibility of all the different layers in the solution from end to end, kind of from the analytics capabilities, which some customers might be aware of, some not. Hopefully they've heard a lot of the messaging that's been out in the last few years, but we've got analytics capabilities around performance, kind of user insights through security analytics to understand user behavior. We've got performance analytics to understand how things are performing in your environment. It does what it says on the tin, funnily enough. We've got things like connection monitoring for if connections coming through either the cloud services, or if it's a hybrid deployment, then it might be coming through Citrix ADCs or NetScalers.
I think that's a really interesting thing. I think from a reporting capability and managing the environment for our customers, I think it's fair to say, and I guess I would say it, wouldn't I, but Citrix works best with Citrix. So the ADC conversation, I mean, NetScaler, if we want to call it that, if I dare use old names, but I think we all know what we're talking about. The ADC engine, I guess, is providing that ability to look right inside the packets and work out where the blockages are, what's at the heart of the matter, and giving, I guess, the tech management teams within our clients or service providers that are delivering that, the ability to solve those problems quicker.
And that visibility into the connection can be really quite important, because I think kind of a lot of us are quite spoiled. I mean, me personally, I sit at home, if I'm using Citrix, I'm using it over kind of a 700 meg broadband connection, whereas we've got customers where they've got people all over the world, and kind of talking to a customer yesterday where kind of their only connectivity is through satellite links.
Wow, okay.
And they've got kind of like super high latency, they've got super low bandwidth.
Yep.
So being able to understand the kind of granular detail of exactly what's going on for a user connection, if you've got a user who's kind of sat on a ship in the middle of the ocean, then if you're trying to understand the performance problem, you need that level of visibility, and that's where I think Citrix has some real strength in owning the entire stack. Gives you the ability to have a real low level understanding of exactly what's happening.
I think, Andy, what it goes back to what we said at the beginning of the conversation today, you know, it's where Citrix are continuing to innovate and add value, you know, compared to native solutions. These are those areas where these are key important criteria for our customers to meet their goals, management, operational efficiencies, cost efficiencies, so on and so forth. And that's where Citrix continue to provide those innovations to make sure those things happen. It's really, really important.
So, top of mind, I said there were a couple of things that were big considerations for customers when they're moving to public cloud, and I said number 2 was cost. Number 1, security.
Interesting.
So, what can Citrix do around security?
Well, look, you know, I think that the challenge we have as Citrix is we've got a really strong proposition for our security capability within our products. You know, the ability to manage what users are physically doing, what their key presses are, they're physically on their screen, whether they are geolocated. You know, they recognise Jaime, who's connected to a VPN from a home office, but suddenly a Jaime Neail that dials in from a fast food restaurant somewhere in Middle East might not necessarily be, you know, need to send a trigger somewhere. So all that capability, and I think the challenge we have as Citrix, as I say, is we are typically known as the VDI company, but very much we are a leading edge security organisation that's driving that conversation. I guess that needs to, I think, in all honesty, we need to step up that conversation with our customers so they start to understand more about our space.
Absolutely. I mean, I think people talk about zero trust as kind of like the target model these days, whereas if you look at it the right way, Citrix has really been in the zero trust game for decades now. So they've been kind of ahead of the curve in terms of being able to take a kind of untrusted device and then provision services to that. That's kind of the model a lot of people are aspiring to now. So, I mean, in terms of the fundamentals of what Citrix can do, I think there's quite a good proposition there, and especially some of the new capabilities that have been announced. So we've got things like adaptive authentication, which has just been released to GA, and a lot of people are getting it for free even, which is fantastic, because I love nothing more than new features, but I love them the most when they don't cost anything extra. So for all the customers that have got that basically gives them effectively an infinitely powerful authentication engine to kind of build whatever kind of authentication policies they want and have that delivered as a cloud service, which is super powerful. Kind of, it's well beyond anything that you're going to be able to do with conditional access policies in Azure AD, which tends to be kind of the go-to for kind of cloud services. And it can integrate with everything. You can have it integrated with Azure AD, you can have it integrated with Intune, you can have all sorts of different authentication factors. You can even use the kind of old RSA server that you've got sat in the office now, which is great for customers, and it just provides an even stronger front-end security proposition for being able to give people contextual access. And I think that's one of the huge differentiators for me between a kind of Citrix DAS solution and an AVD solution, is being able to provide contextual access. The difference being with AVD, with Windows 365, you have security controls, but they tend to be very static. So you define your security posture, and that's your security posture. With Citrix, again, it's very much aimed at kind of the more complex scenarios where there's not a one-size-fits-all, and you want to be able to provide a simple environment but be able to provide contextual security. And I think that's one of the areas where, for me, Citrix have got some real strengths in terms of being able to deliver some simplicity, but also being able to handle complex requirements without having to have other solutions laid in to provide different elements. So providing a consistent approach.
You're right, and that approach plays back nicely to the comments we were talking about earlier around, you know, customers, you know, your point 2, cost. Because we're talking about this is capability that's within the product and is delivering against that strategy. You know, and I think, you know, if I wind back to where we started in terms of partnership and relationship, and align this conversation to, you know, the importance of our relationship with Microsoft and our customers, this is where Microsoft really value what we're doing in this space and are exceptionally keen to work with us to go and win together in our mutual customers. And as a result of that, you know, we together as Microsoft and Citrix have got over 400,000 customers globally and about 100 million plus users, which is great. So really this technology that we work together on is critical for our mutual success. And Microsoft recognise that, and that we drive that partnership really strong and hard. I don't think we discussed it before, but we had an all hands recently for all of the Microsoft guys across EMEA and the Citrix guys and girls across EMEA about what is our joint proposition to our customers, how are we delivering joint solutions to our customers based on all of the things, interestingly, we've talked about today, about how we're driving extra value, extending the capability, and so on and so forth around the hyperscaler cloud Azure platform. And it's really important that we continue to do those things. Those sessions are endorsed typically by, and in this case by, our EMEA level execs across our organisation, and we repeat that event. We localise it for various points in the globe. We ran this in the US and in the Asian market as well. But it's that level of engagement that we have, the dialogue we have within our organisation, that enables us to work very collaboratively in our engagement with our customers to make sure that what we are delivering with partners like yourself actually deliver on the promise of the capability. And
I think that's a really important message, is that the kind of overall winner is the customer effectively, because there's choices. I mean, customers, like we started off saying, AVD might be good enough, Windows 365 might be good enough, but then for the customers where it's not, that's where we've got other solutions in the ecosystem that can leverage that. And again, it's important to understand that AVD is not just the service, it's also a set of entitlements that you can leverage, and you can leverage that with Citrix DaaS as well in the cloud, so you can have the best of both worlds effectively, and just decide on what feature set, what functionality you need to be able to support what you're trying to deliver to your workforce.
And I think, Andy, as a result of all these things we've talked about today, talked about partnership with Microsoft, partnership with Ultima, and working closely with yourself and your colleagues, I think you've got a great opportunity to go and have these conversations with your customers, to drive that level of engagement and help them with some of these challenges.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of things that we kind of work with customers on. So we can meet customers wherever they are on the journey. For a lot of people, it may be a case of you just starting to make those decisions as to what your journey is going to be. So we've got strategy engagements where we can actually work with customers to kind of help them understand what are the most important features they're going to need to be able to support that. So giving them the benefit of, so like we said, some customers might kind of go with one solution, then kind of 6 months later be like, that was like maybe not the best, but it's not too late. We can kind of help bring that decision point earlier and kind of help guide through some of the potential pitfalls that you might find going different routes, and help you kind of on that path to deliver a kind of effective service for your workforce. If you're already in one of the different models, so if you've decided to go down the AVD route, we've also got some services we can deliver around that. So we do also kind of provide professional services around Azure Virtual Desktop. We've got a lot of automation capabilities in that space, and we do work with customers to help make sure they're getting the most out of their AVD environment. Because like you say, there is a category of users where that's, a good solution. But again, we want to make sure that we're getting the cost efficiency, we've got good management approaches, and we can operationally support it to make sure that we're giving users the best experience we can at the kind of most optimal cost for the business. So we can help around kind of assessments and kind of optimization engagements around the AVD space. And we can also help customers with Citrix DaaS. So we've got some quick start engagements. So with our cloud Citrix Success Services Manager, we're able to kind of engage with customers and kind of help them get their first workloads into public cloud. So that's a kind of structured engagement that we can work through, and it can potentially be part funded by Microsoft depending on kind of what their position is. So that's kind of a really popular one where we can basically take customers where they might have a Citrix deployment, Citrix DaaS entitlement that they're currently using on-prem, and they're just looking at public cloud and how that fits in. So we can help accelerate them and get them deployed, get them working, and make sure that we're kind of ticking all the right boxes and starting out with all the leading practices from a Citrix and Microsoft Azure perspective to make sure we're covering all the bases. So we've got things that we can work with customers. We can work with customers on throughout the life cycle of wherever they are, with the end goal being is we want to be able to make customers successful. They're not just spinning up desktops in the cloud because they really like cloud or they really like desktops. There's a particular capability they're looking to deliver, and kind of what we're trying to do is make sure that customers get the best experience out of the solutions they're deploying. They're getting the best value as well.
So I think it's great that we talked about existing customers that are already on the AVD journey, but there are clearly a great number of customers that are not sure what to do about their cloud strategy, still thinking about it, may have some entitlement. Does Citrix play a part? That's a great conversation for your guys to work with those customers to effectively deliver some of those services.
Absolutely.
And drive that understanding.
Yeah, and understanding's key, because again, you need to understand the capabilities of different solutions, have a good understanding of what your requirements are, and then we can certainly help you understand where it would be a good position to get to. So that's been a brilliant conversation for me. I've really enjoyed talking about kind of some of the, kind of just understanding how Citrix and Microsoft are still kind of working together for customer benefit. And that's the really exciting thing is there's a lot of capabilities for customers now, and kind of our job is to help you understand how you can make use of those, and kind of how Citrix and Microsoft working together can give you a kind of really comprehensive solution. And Ultima, as a partner of both Citrix and Microsoft, can help you on your cloud journey, be that with Azure Virtual Desktop or with Citrix DaaS. So I'd like to say thanks very much for joining us, Jamie. It's been an absolute blast.
Thanks, Andy.
Hopefully everyone's found that useful, and if anyone has any questions about any of the engagements we've talked about, if you're just starting off on your cloud journey, if you're in AVD and you'd like us to help you look at cost optimization or kind of how you can optimize delivery, or if you're interested in Citrix DaaS and how that can be supported in Microsoft Azure, get in contact with your account manager. We'd love to have a talk with you. So with that, thank you very much for joining us.